Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago, one of the couple 2-3 best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. On this episode, we've got dog turd hockey, WTF moments from former Cubs and Sox greats, QBs of the NFL draft, and you. But first, I'd like to thank our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they're the AHL minor league affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. What does that mean for you? You get to see the stars of tomorrow today at family-friendly, affordable prices. So, season is in full effect. Head on over to icehogs.com, pick up a hat, shirt, jersey, tickets, and more. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. All right, Alex. I think there's a few things that we definitely are going to talk about today.
Yeah, one really sticks out, and you saved the biggest news for last in that little opening there. So I knew there was just going to be a dramatic build-up for that. It's really, really nice that we have a show in February with spring training coming up that we can really digest the team where it's at right now, because doing all this, maybe that, has been really frustrating.
Yeah, and before we jump into this, I just want to send a reminder out. If you are in the Chicagoland area and you like pizza, Alex and I will be doing a joint podcast, a live podcast with our friends at Bow. And this will be at Peace Pizza at 1927 West North Avenue in Chicago this Thursday, February 15th at 7 p.m. So if you are in the area, head on over, eat some pizza, hang out with us. We got some ha-has and some sports talks going.
This is going to be really awesome. So yeah, please do come out. I've been looking forward to this for weeks and it's finally here. So, so pumped for this.
Yeah, it'll be good. So what do you want to talk about first, Alex?
I think we should save the best for last, like we did in the intro. So why don't we just start with some dog turd hockey?
Yeah, so pretty much like a month or so ago, you had Quenneville and Duncan Keith and Patrick Kane and a lot of the Hawks players talking about playing with a sense of urgency and treating every game like it's a playoff game because they know they're behind the 8 ball and making the playoffs, blah, 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 blah. Fast forward like a month or whatever it is now, and they are still 10 points out of the playoffs with multiple teams in front of them, and they're on like a 5-game losing streak. Can we call this season over yet?
Yes, it's over. Look at the playoff chances. This is based on sportsclubstats.com. This is an incredibly reliable website. They do really good work. Their chances of making the playoffs are 2.5% as it stands right now.
That's not good.
No, and it'll change with the game against the Coyotes tonight, whether they win or they lose. It'll change slightly, but it's going to stay less than 10%, at least I'm pretty sure it will, no matter what happens. They've been below the 20% mark for some time now. And this stretch, this terrible, terrible stretch, not even just this 5-game losing streak, But really the stretch going back since the start of the new year pretty much shattered their playoff hopes.
Absolutely. I just don't even know what to say about this team. And I mean, I guess at this point, you're not going to make the playoffs. So I don't know what the point of rushing Corey Crawford back is. And there isn't. They're trying to use that as a rally point, but it's too late. It's too late to be a rally point.
Yeah, absolutely. Because the goaltending tandem right now is just not going to cut it. Jeff Glass was a really good story, and you got to give him credit for what he did in the first few games in the NHL. But it's pretty obvious that he's not an NHL caliber goaltender. He's a good minor leaguer, but just not an NHL guy. It was nice that he got a shot. They had to give him a shot. But, when you're not going to cut it, you're not going to cut it. And Anton Forsberg is still young, so.
Yeah, this is the Glass experiment is just over. I watched him play in the AHL, and he wasn't good enough to be a regular goalie there. It's not that he's a bad guy. It's a nice story, but this is a team that needs better goaltending. And at this point, what do you gain out of bringing Corey Crawford back? Because he's on the ice and they're talking about how close he is. What's the point? What is that going to get you?
And they say they're close, but it doesn't seem like they have any idea when he's going to be back. So I don't really know if he is that quote unquote close. We know so little about this Crawford situation. It makes this whole thing even more frustrating because you're not just dealing with a goaltender, you're dealing with the guy who was your most important asset this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's what the Blackhawks have to accomplish in order to make the playoffs. So they've played 55 games. So they've got 27 games left. They've got 27 games left. In that time, so right now the wild card teams are Dallas and Minnesota. And they would have to leapfrog Colorado, who is 8 points in front of them. They would have to leapfrog Anaheim, who's 9 points in front of them. I'm sorry, I was looking at this wrong. I was looking at they're 8 points behind Colorado, 9 points behind Anaheim, 9 points behind Los Angeles, who they would have to leapfrog, 10 points behind Minnesota that they would have to leapfrog. So they would have to leapfrog 4 teams, 10 points in 27 games.
Yeah, that's just not happening.
And the Blackhawks team right now, you know what their home record is?
I know it's not good.
12, 12, and 3.
That's not going to do it.
I mean, let's compare that to the Las Vegas Golden Knights, who at home are 19, 4, and 2.
Yeah, quite a bit of difference there.
And these teams that are in front of you for the wild card, their last 10, Minnesota 6-2 and 2, Los Angeles is 6-4 and 0, Anaheim 5-3-2, Colorado 4-5-1, and you Blackhawks are 2-6 and 2.
Again, that stretch that pretty much ended the season right there.
Yeah, every day you're like, well, this is the day that you got to turn it on, and then you have a 3-0 stinker loss against Minnesota.
It's at the point where I'm so done hearing the same things every game. We got to be better. We got to be better. I don't want to sound mad at this team because I cannot be mad after all that they've given us and that we know that everyone is going to eventually get old and slow down. Keith and Seabrook, it's hard to imagine how they played so good for so long with that many miles on them. You knew they were going to slow down. You knew sometimes chemistry wasn't going to always be there with the changes and bringing up young kids. You know that. And pardon me if this sounds a little meatball, but I don't see much sense of, I don't know if caring is the right word, but I feel like they're not showing enough emotion in the way they're slowing down a bit. Like, if I was in that situation, I would be pretty mad about the way things are going. But pretty much what I hear from either the team or Bowman or Quenneville is just like, we gotta be better. It's you don't see much fiery passion there right now. And I know that could be kind of an overrated thing, but it just, like, a little sense of emotion would be nice. I mean, do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but to be fair, we don't know what's happening behind closed doors.
No, we don't.
These things could be happening as well. And plus, this team has a lot of veterans on it that, for the most part, veterans are going to be more even keeled about things. But I mean, here's my point. Am I really frustrated with the way this season has gone? Absolutely. Do I realize that the window for a championship may be closed with this team? Maybe. But I'm reading and hearing a lot from Blackhawks fans that they're spitting hatred towards players. Now, we're not speaking like glowingly of Keith and Seabrook, and not because, I mean, at least for me, it's not because of hatred at all. I so appreciate what these guys have done. I'm speaking on the fact that they have these albatross contracts that we can't move and that are preventing us from doing other things. But we had a pretty amazing decade run as far as hockey goes.
Which is why I could never hate them. I would never hate them, because when it's all said and done and we look back at what they did, we're going to remember the 3 championships. We're going to remember those long playoff runs. We're going to remember the clutch goals that Seabrook scored as a defenseman in the playoffs. We're going to remember Duncan Keith carrying the defense on his back to get that last cup in 2015. It would feel so wrong for me to hate on them. Is it fair to say that their play has slowed down and the contracts are bad? Yes, because that's the truth. That's just the flat, unfortunate truth. But to hate them for it, it just doesn't seem right. There's a fine line between criticism of play and an observation between, like, spewing hate at them, saying they suck, they're losers, they're, the worst. It's like, you got to draw a line somewhere.
Yeah, and I'm hearing a lot of negativity, and I'm fine. Is talk about how their contract is bad for where they are now. Talk about how
right, because it is.
You're disappointed with the way the team is playing and their standing. Fine, but if you are being so negative, either you have a short-term memory or you were not around before 2010, is the Blackhawks went through some dark ages of hockey. I mean, some real dark ages.
It's funny you bring up those dark ages, because there are people bringing up those dark ages again and thinking that the Hawks are heading for said dark ages. And one thing I want to say about that is, for the people that didn't really live in the dark ages or watch them through the dark ages, and I'm not going to criticize you if you didn't. If you honestly started watching hockey when the Hawks got good, I can't criticize that, because hockey isn't really a major sport compared to basketball, baseball, football as it is in America. And cities don't tend to pay much attention to their hockey team in the United States when their team is doing poorly. A few may, but not a lot. But anyway, even the way things are going now, and right now, it's pretty much a complete downfall the past few weeks. To reach that level of bad in the dark ages, in the end of the Bill Wirtz era, I don't think they'll ever stoop that low. I just don't think it's possible to stoop that low. with the ownership that they have, with the outlook that they have, the experiencing through all that. I don't think you could reach that type of low again.
Yeah, just to put it into perspective for those that weren't around, right before he passed away and before Rocky took over the team, Old Man Wirtz, when he still owned the team, ESPN magazine did this like ranking system, and they put all the teams in the 4 major sports. So NFL, NHL, NBA, and MLB. And they rated all the teams on all these different factors between cost of going to games, the success of the team, and it was like fan metrics, player metrics. I
think there's some marketing involved in there as well.
Yeah, and it was all these metrics, and they ranked the Blackhawks as the worst team in all of sports.
I remember that.
This was probably 2006?
4. It was 2004.
2004, okay.
Yeah.
And I saw it, and I was just like, somebody pointed out to me, and I was getting ready to be upset. And I was like, I mean, it's kind of right. This is a terrible team. As Old Man Wirtz was quoted, and this was quoted in the ESPN article. So it's, they had to have some sort of source. And Old Man Wirtz had a new general manager, and he's like, I have a 3-year plan to get us to a Stanley Cup. And Bill Wirtz said, whoa, what's all this Stanley Cup talk? Stanley Cup, that sounds expensive. Because he wanted to just make a profit off of this team. He didn't care about winning at all.
And I think one thing that really, really ticked the fans off was the blacking out of the games towards the end.
Yeah, the games weren't even on television. You couldn't watch. Well, in the Chicago market. I mean, I lived in Philadelphia at the time. I could catch games here and there, but I would basically, very few times they were on television out there, but I pretty much only got to see them a handful of times a year when they came out to Philadelphia. That was about it.
And even so, they weren't worth watching.
Yeah, there were games in the 90s that I went, and this is not even an exaggeration, you could count how many fans were in the stadium.
Yeah, it was funny. I was doing a research article on the end of the Bill Wirtz era, senior year school project for college. This was about 2 years ago. And I went through some old photographs of Blackhawks games in the mid-2000s. So we're talking 2003 to about 2007. And there were a few games where they said the attendance was not even breaking like the 10,000 mark. That's how bad it was.
It was bad. And, there was definitely at the time that a group of people that were just like hockey diehards. And then there was people who clearly they must be there because their company had season tickets because they couldn't get bowl season tickets. And that's who was at games and the press.
Yeah.
That's who was there. And
being someone who's very close to Rosemont, I mean, when I was a kid, when people went to hockey games or talked about hockey, the Chicago Wolves were the team. I know you're living a little bit of a different area, but here, close to the Chicago Wolves, people wear Wolves stuff. They were talking about them. They're saying, oh, I'm going to the Wolves game. It's like the Blackhawks were an afterthought. This was when I was in grade school, so that's early to mid 2000s. And they scooped up a lot of frustrated fans. You saw games that at the Allstate Arena that had a higher attendance than the United Center. When an AHL team / IHL team is outdrawing the local NHL team, not only the local NHL team, but an original 6 team, that's huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's crazy. And so when Old Man Wirtz died, Rocky took over, and honestly, it was just an absolute renaissance you saw this turnaround, and fans started coming out in droves. People that had never watched hockey before suddenly just wearing, Blackhawks stuff head to toe. And, it's a little frustrating because I would have, people be like, you're just a fan. You weren't a fan before 2010. You know hockey before 2010.
I get that all the time.
I'm just like, and I'm like, I still remember as a kid crying when they lost the Stanley Cup to Pittsburgh. Now I was like 13.
Yeah.
It seemed like the end of the world.
Yeah, that was 2 years before my time, but I know that series very well. Yeah, I mean, I remember my first
Just to put it into perspective, it was before you were born. Jaromir Jagr was on that team.
Yeah, he was. When he retired this year, he was the last active player to score in that old Chicago stadium.
Wait, did he retire, or did he just not be in the NHL anymore?
He's going over to Europe, I
KHL,
think. So I think he's retiring, but I don't know if there was an official announcement. I don't know. He was released by the Flames, and I think he's done in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm sure he's done in the NHL, but I bet he's got another couple years still in the KHL or something, in another league.
Yeah, I'm just saying NHL.
The longevity of his career is just absolutely incredible.
I mean, it's longer than I've existed.
Yeah, he was competing for Stanley Cups before you were born.
Yeah. He's won Stanley Cups before I was born.
Yeah, and how old are you?
23.
Yeah, and he's just leaving the NHL to go to another league.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
And like I said, he's scored a number of goals in the old Chicago Stadium. No other active player has done that.
I got a funny, I'm sure anybody that's listening to the show that is an old head like me, I didn't get to go to that many games at old Chicago Stadium because my family doesn't go to sporting events. They just watch it on television. But when I did get to go, one of the times I was at old Chicago Stadium, there was game sucked. The Blackhawks were terrible, but a fight broke out between fans in the stadium. They started fighting, and they started tumbling down the stairs between the aisles, and they're just punching each other as they're rolling down the stairs. And as they're rolling, people that are on the edge seats are punching them as they're rolling by. And so it's just people just punching. I was like, this is awesome.
My old math teacher from high school told me a long time ago that the last time he went to a hockey game at the Chicago Stadium, he was sitting like right underneath the upper deck. So the ledge of the upper deck was right above his head, and fans were just downpouring beer on him and his friends like the whole time.
One time, the story of my aunt before she passed away was a diehard Blackhawks fan. And she was at a game once, and her favorite player was Keith Magnuson.
Classic.
And she was cheering on Keith Magnuson, and somebody told her Keith Magnuson sucked. So my aunt punched him out. I was like, well, that's what happened. That's what my family does. That's why we don't go to games.
I know. I bet the crowds, because I've never seen the Chicago Stadium, but I would bet the crowds at the United Center are a little different.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot different, but it's a it's a much different experience. It's not like a worse experience. It's just really different. The old Chicago Stadium was both stadiums are so loud, but old Chicago Stadium was just a different kind of loud. And you just had, I mean, part of it is the era, part of it was just, the way the stadium was. That stadium just shook, and you just had basically just diehard old gruff hockey fans, And now it's, a lot more families and things like that. So just part of it is just the era.
Yeah, that's definitely a good point. I know that the layout was not very different, but it was much more compact from all the pictures I've seen and all the footage I've seen. And like you said, eras are different, fans behave differently, and sometimes that thing changes just over the span of a decade. But I still wish I could have experienced going there at least once, because it was torn down when I was born. It was like torn down within like a month or two when I was born. So, never had a chance to see it, but I bet it was fun for people watching.
Yeah, but it was funny because you were so unaware of what you were part of when you were there. It was just what it was. And then once the building was torn down and you started going to games at United Center, and then you realized how different it was, that you started to look back on old Chicago Stadium. And part of it is you wax nostalgic about it. It's not like, oh man, it was the best place ever and they tore down heaven and the United Center sucks. It wasn't that great of a stadium. It was just an experience. It was kind of like going to a game in the Thunderdome, like Mad Max. It was a weird place. And you sort of didn't realize the experiences you had until they weren't there anymore.
Yeah, and I'm sure people also get very nostalgic about just the pure history of the Chicago Stadium, because let's face it, there were a lot of historical things that happened there. I've never seen or heard the actual organ that was there. I've heard footage of it, but I know people got very nostalgic over that. So, people like their history, people like their nostalgia, and I completely get that. I'm into that stuff too. But never once have I heard like it was a beautiful building. People are just like, I loved it because it was loud and the crowd was great and the atmosphere was great. Like I heard stuff like that, but to me, the way people talk about Chicago Stadium isn't the same as Wrigley Field, where Wrigley Field has the scenic view of the ivy on the walls and the old scoreboard. It just seemed like a little bit of a different type of nostalgia.
Yeah, it was. It was, a little bit traumatic. It was just a weird place. It's not like, I'm really sad they tore it down and built this beautiful United Center, because the United Center is a really nice place.
And I don't really, I know it's way after the fact, but I don't really hear anyone going around saying, I wish they still had the old Chicago Stadium.
No, nobody says that. They'll talk about their experiences there, and they'll talk about how crazy it was and how loud it was and the building shook. But they won't say, that was an awesome building. But I mean, going back to, the play, I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. This team's got a lot of young players, and they're going to need to play to get better. And you've got these albatross contracts with Seabrook and Keith, but the big contracts for Kane and Taves, they should be okay, because those two guys are still in their 20s.
Yeah,
they're still in their 20s.
And part of me thinks that some of the lack of production with Taves, some of it's a physical issue. He's getting beaten up at times because he's not very big, and he may have lost a spring in his step, just, with mileage, but I still think he has some left in the tank. And part of me thinks there's just a chemistry issue there. When one thing doesn't click on a line in hockey, nobody clicks. So sometimes it's not just one individual player, it's just a lack of chemistry. And part of me thinks that's one of the big issues. And like you said, there are a lot of young players and there are a lot of old, slow players. So between like Taves and Kane and Saad, there's like that just mix that doesn't go right together. You have young guys with no experience, and you have old guys who are slow and beaten down and can't perform at their level. Because think about it, they still had young guys on those cup winning teams, but the veterans, since they were still in their prime and good, would assist them in both development and supporting them on the ice. That chemistry is not there, and it's just kind of a bad combination, and that's reflective with their play. And unfortunately, there is no easy fix to this because it's not like a lot of teams where you could just trade the veterans away. The veterans like Keith and Seabrook, unfortunately, are under huge contracts, and other teams don't want to touch those contracts. So you're kind of stuck with that.
Well, even if you could find trade partners, they have full no trade clauses. So you would have to convince those guys to move away from a team that they've known for so long. That's a big issue.
Yep.
I can't see anybody waiving these no trade clauses. But I mean, is this all no hope? Then no, not really. It's just you're going to have to hit on some of these young guys. The young guys are going to have to step up, and you're going to have to be creative with the cap space that you do have, and you're going to have to figure out a way to get a top 4 defenseman. And that's to go along with last year's draft pick who might be on the team next year, defenseman, and I think somewhere along the way you're going to need some change of philosophy, whether that's Quenneville goes, whether that's Stan Bowman goes. I think staying the course is not what's going to work. But I don't look. Stan Bowman was right. It's not like their superstars are 40 years old. You've got 20-year-old, still in their 20s, Kane and Taves. You've got Corey Crawford, and you've got a lot of young talent, and they're just going to have to. They're going to have to hit, and they're going to have to start clicking, and they're going to have to start having consistency in lines. As I know, Quenneville's had magic over the years with, tinkering with lines every single night, but having Brandon Saad on the first line, then the fourth line, then the first line, that's not good for anybody.
No, it's just it doesn't work like that consistently for a long period of time. And the thing that I've always said about that kind of thing is, look, even if it works for a while, there's going to be a time where you're going to have to change. Sports is an ever-evolving entity, whether it's hockey, whether it's football, it's basketball, whatever. The style of play is always evolving. Adjustments are always being made. And though something may have worked for a while, it's not going to work forever. So you got to adapt. Look at hockey now. Speed is the name of the game. When the Blackhawks were getting good, it was a lot of finesse and skill. Now it's speed. Hockey players will even tell you, like Zach Parise said in an interview with 670 The Score, that speed is the name of the game. Not only speed, but speedy youths. And adjustments have to be made here, and sometimes that does involve a whole change of philosophy in the management or the coaching. It's hard to sit here and say what moves to make because A, it's going to be hard to make appropriate moves, and B, it's just kind of hard to point at everyone and say, okay, fire him, and that's going to make everything better, because that's not necessarily true. So in my humble opinion, this is not an easy fix. They're in kind of a crappy situation right now. Do I think that it can be fixed? Sure. I just don't have a definite answer of exactly how they're going to do it. We know what hockey is like nowadays. We know what other teams are doing to find success. The question is, how do the Blackhawks find that? That's just, there's so many questions with that right now.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. So it's going to be a lot of wait and see, because they're going to have to hit on draft picks. They're going to have to be smart with what cap space they do have, and they're going to have to have some luck in there. But do I think this window is over? No. Do I think that it's sort of shut? Yes. But I think you could still open it back up. Just got to be some smart retooling. And I think there does need to be some sort of hierarchy change. And I just don't know which direction they go. And because this is such a loyal organization, you wonder if they will do some sort of major shakeup.
Right, because a lot of people are saying they want Q fired, they want Bowman fired, and part of me says, yeah, I wouldn't mind you changing direction either. It's just, what direction do you go in once you do that? And that I don't have the clear answer to. So I try to address this by saying, look, I wouldn't mind a change in direction. And this is me just talking personally. If they decided to go in a different direction with coaching, with Q, and they say, thanks for everything, but we're going to go in another direction, I wouldn't protest. I'm okay with a change in philosophy. But I'm not going to act like I know what the right change is or who would be the right guys to do it. It's just something I have to look into more.
Yeah. So should we move on to Bears or Bulls?
Sure.
Let's go Bulls first. I don't want to talk too much on them, but because they are a bad team, and let's not get this wrong. They're the right amount of badness. This is not a pre Derrick Rose, post Michael Jordan bad, but where it was just bad. This is the right amount of bad because you've got a pretty solid core of young players, and you've traded away whatever you can trade away. You've made so much salary cap space, which is going to be huge for them coming in the next couple of years. But they are a bad team, and and I think we all root for them to lose in some way. I mean, it's nice to see wins, but I think we all do root for them because we want to see them to have this flexibility of a top 3 draft pick.
Yeah, in year one of a rebuild, you need to do everything possible to get a high pick, especially in the NBA. It's not easy to root for your team to lose, but I think a lot of fans realize that if you want to become an actual contender and you want a chance at a title, you are going to have to go through some really bad times early on in a rebuild. That's just, unfortunately, that's the way it works. And until sports changes the rules of drafting and all that stuff, tanking is going to be used.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bulls have actually been really smart about how they've done things. Is look at, after we talked about the Nico Mirotic trade, but if you think about after that, how many teams got a number 1 pick for anybody? I think there was 3 total number 1 or first round draft picks that were traded in this trade deal. And one of them was for Blake Griffin. The other one was for Nico Mirotic. So teams were not doling out first round draft picks, and the Bulls got one for a flash in the pan, Nico Mirotic.
Yeah. And that was really big.
Yeah, and the first round draft pick they got from the Pelicans, as of right now, they're only a half game out of being a wild card team.
Yeah, you don't realize it because they're not talked about a lot, but they are.
So, I mean, the Bulls could be, they could be a team with 2 lottery picks.
Wouldn't that be something?
That would be really something. And honestly, they're not that far out from, they're right now, the Bulls are in 8th seed, but they're only 2 games out of being the worst record in basketball. There's a lot of teams tied for it. Is Sacramento, Phoenix, Dallas, Atlanta are all tied for the worst record in hockey. And 1 game behind them is Orlando, Memphis, and Brooklyn. Then it's the Bulls, 2 games behind. So you've really got a good chance of getting one of the top 3 picks. And if you could splash in there like a miracle with, the 0.5% shot of getting a number 1 pick with the last lottery spot, I mean, that would just be a total coup if you could have, 2 really, really, really good draft picks to go along with Chris Dunn, Zach LaVine, and Lauri Markkanen.
Yeah, exactly. I think that right now where the Bulls are, if they get those good picks next year, I should say this coming draft, and then obviously they play next year, you get some real good talent there along with the core you already have, then you'll start to see the dynamic of this team for the future kind of take shape. You're already seeing it a little bit, but they're still really, really far off. So, look, for the people who say they hate tanking, think about it. If this works and they're contending for championships in a few years, you'll probably look back at this and say, that's good. It's good that we were able to put this team together, even though we had to go through some really rough times. Like I said, I get people have their opinions on tanking and whatnot, and I know it doesn't always seem ethical, but that's just how winners are made these days.
Yeah, and and you traded Nico, and they ended up holding on to Holiday and Robin Lopez, but when you listen to John Paxson talk, it's pretty clear that they're going to trade those two guys over the summer. They just didn't get the deals they wanted.
Right.
But those guys are going to get reduced minutes because two big things is you need to see, or three big, you need to see if these young guys can play. With extended minutes, can Denzel Valentine play? Some nights he looks really good. Some nights he looks like dog poop. Felicio, you gave him all this money, and he's like, I don't care. I'm just not going to play anymore. And there are rumblings that he's got a bunch of money. He's got enough money for the rest of his life, and he's content where he's at, which is bad. That would be real bad. That would be bad on him. That would be bad on the Bulls. Like, you gave this guy money and you didn't need to, and he just quit on you.
Yeah.
And then you need to see, can Campaign play?
I'm not so sure about that.
I mean, my magic 8-ball, I'm shaking it and saying all signs point to no, but you got to figure these things out. And you know what? If Felicio and Campaign can't play anymore, it's not gonna hurt you in these standings.
No, it's not. And hey, Campaign, now you can give him plenty of time to play. And, maybe he proves to be like a bench guy. I don't know. I just know he can't really shoot. But hey, now's the time to see, like you said. One thing that I'm really kind of curious about is what they're going to do with all this money they have, because they're going to have all this cap room. I know we talked about it on shows past, but I still just don't know what they're going to spend it on, because we know the free agent class is going to be massive, but they're at a point in a rebuild where they're not going to attract LeBron or Kevin Durant or Paul George. That's just not going to happen. So do you spend a lot of money on a significant role player, like whether it's a starter or not, or do you kind of spread out the money and get a few role players? That's just kind of my question right now.
I mean, you could. I don't know. I don't know what you do. I mean, you're going to have to sign somebody because you've got the salary floor. I'm not sure who's in the 2019 class of free agents. Let me look quick. Who?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like they have to spend it all this summer. You don't have to spend it.
Yeah, I don't know who. Let's see. Here we go. And 29 NBA free agents, and some of these I'm sure are going to be guys that could opt out after this year. But
right.
Ooh, Ricky Rubio. Ooh. Yeah, there's really no Klay Thompson.
Hey, unrelated, the Blackhawks just gave up a goal to the Coyotes not even 2 minutes in.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Woof.
Yeah, there's really nobody coming in this class. So I don't know. I don't know what you do with it. I mean, the only thing I can think of is you can use that money, take on other teams' terrible contracts, and get them to give you draft picks for taking on those terrible contracts. So you're using up the cap space, still getting getting multiple draft picks every year, until your players are all ready to play, and then just have your homegrown talent. That's one option. I don't really know what they do. I don't know what they're going to spend this money on.
Makes it kind of exciting. They have so many options here. I mean, some are more realistic than others, but they can explore a lot of things right now with all this money.
It really could. In having all this money, it really puts you in a good place. That's the thing is fiscal responsibility in the salary cap era it puts you in a really, really good spot. So they do have these opportunities. They could go out and sign a Mac. They could make a splash and sign, a big name guy and jumpstart this rebuild, because they're really not that far off of being able to compete. We saw that with Nico Mirotic playing well, and they were on a 7-game winning streak, and they how well were they playing during that streak? You have a healthy Dunn, Zach LaVine back, Lauri Markkanen playing regularly, and you add another one or two pieces, and suddenly this is not that bad of a team, especially in a weak East. Who knows? But but whatever it is, this team is a much different team when Chris Dunn is on the floor.
Definitely. And could we talk about what Zach LaVine did against his former team the other night?
Yes, that is one of the last things I wanted to talk about with the Bulls. Everybody was talking about how the Timberwolves were going to be in town and Jimmy Butler was just going to dominate this game, and it was going to be the Jimmy Butler game and Jimmy. And damn it if Zach LaVine didn't ruin that all.
Though I've been rooting for the tank most of the season, I really wanted the Bulls to win that game. And when they won that game, I was watching with a friend and we were celebrating. And I even said, this is going to be like the high point of the Bulls season, in my opinion. That was the happiest I've been for a Bulls win by far this year. Like that felt good.
Yeah, it really did. As much as I didn't want them to win games, that was one I wanted to win. And it was great to see. And it was weird. There was no plays running the last half of that game. It was Jimmy coming down and Zach coming down. And you saw finally this guy, some of the potential that you have here. And he's like 23 years old.
Yeah. I mean, I watched that game-tying 3 that night over and over and over on my phone again. And boy, was the United Center loud or what when that happened.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was such a fun game. Like I said, and I think we've said this ad nauseum, is this team, even though they're not a good team, they're 19-36, they're fun to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch this way over last year's team when you were dragging out Dwayne Wade and Rajon Rondo with absolutely no future direction whatsoever. This is much more entertaining to watch.
Yeah, this is really fun basketball, and they're only going to get better. That's the cool part.
Yeah, exactly. It's exciting that they are where they are, because in this first year of the rebuild, I've probably said this before on this show, going into the season, I'm like, dude, we're going to be bad for so many years. To me, I didn't see a whole lot going for them this year outside Lauri Markkanen, but seeing Lauri and Dunn and LaVine play at this just high energy, high power level is really, really giving me more and more confidence. And the fact that they're doing this at such a young age with so much more to learn and develop, like imagine what they'll be in their prime if they're playing like this at such a young age.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. And hopefully the Bulls can really utilize these 2 first-round picks and who knows, there might be more if they make some trades in this over the summer. It's going to be, if they can bring in some talent and spend some of that money wisely, this is going to be a much better team next year.
Yeah, think about it. You get some good draft picks, you make some signings, like you said, because you could either A, add to the core, and or B, add depth. So you'd be addressing multiple issues right there.
Yeah, and you got to see is Bobby Portis, I mean, you got to assume that he's going to be part of a depth of your team when your window is open. But is Valentine, is Campaign, is David Nwaba, are any of these guys future rotation guys? Are they future depth guys, or are they get rid of them guys? That's what you got to figure out right now, and it's also going to help you lose. And hopefully they lose tonight. They're at a 3-point lead against Orlando, who is one of the teams behind you. So this is a double win.
Yeah, that's kind of a big tank game right
it's
there.
It's a big tank game, and I think Orlando is in full tank mode here.
Well, Orlando is just pure bad.
Yeah, they're bad. They're a bad team that's in a bad spot. The Bulls are a bad team in a good spot as far as bad teams.
Exactly.
But yeah, if the Bulls lose this and Orlando wins this, I mean, it rockets the Bulls down a couple of 2-3 spots in the rankings, and jumps their percentage from a top 3 pick from 10% possibly to 25%. So good things are here ahead. Let's move over to the Bears quickly before we wrap this up with a little Cubs talk. Not too much going on Bears. But there's a couple of things I did want to talk about. One is we're at the point where Josh Sitton, the Bears have to either exercise the team option and pay him about $8 million this year, or part ways with him. And I'm hearing from, good points on both sides of, do they keep him? Do they cut him? And I know you wrote an article about it, and I want to hear your thoughts. What's that? Didn't you?
I did.
Yeah. Okay. What are your thoughts on this?
I kind of did what you did and a lot of other people did. I looked at both the pros and cons. I kind of listed them out. I used basically what I saw and statistics. And I know there's not a whole lot of statistics for linemen, but there are some value metrics that you can look at that are pretty reliable. Not absolutely perfect, but a lot of those metrics, though very important, are never really always 100% spot on, but pretty reliable. I saw a good amount of pros and cons on each side. The pros are, you're trying to rebuild your offensive line, and you'd have a guy with a lot of experience, and not only a lot of experience, but in his prime years, he was one of the best linemen in football, especially in the NFC. Those years of the Packers, he was a Pro Bowler year in and year out, just a really good asset. But if they want to completely refurbish this line and they want to kind of go from top to bottom, then they may just have to rid of him to make room for it. I don't know exactly what their plan is for drafting and all that, because there's a lot of speculation that they're going to go after some linemen, which I think is necessary. So if you feel like that you're going to completely rebuild it in the draft and be a free agency, then you really won't have much need for Josh Sitton. I mean, he's aging. He's over 30. It's ancient for a lineman. The money isn't really, I think, a big deal because they have so much cap room as it is, and $8 million is not going to put that big of a dent in it. So overall, if they keep him, cool. If they don't, fine. He's past his prime.
Here's my take on it. I think you need to learn a lesson from when you moved on from Alshon Jeffrey, from Martellus Bennett, and from Brandon Marshall. Were those guys moving on the right thing to do? Probably. Martellus was a coaching nightmare and a locker room nightmare. Same thing with Brandon Marshall. He was a real headache. And Alshon just didn't want to be here. And, was constantly, little knick-knack injuries, and you just didn't want to play through them. Didn't want to be here. So you moved on, and that's fine. Addition by subtraction. But the issue was that you never had somebody in here to replace their production. Right. Nobody to fill the vacuum. And if you get rid of Josh Sitton, that's all fine and good. But you had no depth this past season. Your main guy that was for depth went down with a season-ending injury before the season started. So you didn't have any depth. And if you get rid of Josh Sitton, who replaces him at that guard position? Kyle Long you already have a lot of question marks in Kyle Long, as he's had two major surgeries this offseason. Who knows if he's going to be ready for training camp?
Right. And this whole, right. And that's what makes me think that they may keep him. That's that side of it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the length of the language of the contract, but if they pick it up, is there anything to say they can't cut him later? If there's anything to say that they have to start him, you were right. They have so much cap room. They can do anything they want for the most part and still have plenty of money. So it's not that the money is important in being able to have a guy like him on your line. If you end up drafting Quentin Nelson from Notre Dame, that guy is going to he's going to day one, first day in the NFL, is going to be the best guard you have on your roster. And that's not saying that Josh Sitton's bad, just saying this guy is good and Josh Sitton is old. So you're going to have somebody that's good sitting on the bench, whether that's Kyle Long while he's healing or whether it's Josh Sitton because he got outplayed. But it gives you an opportunity, because if Cody Whitehair goes down, you move Josh Sitton into play center and you don't miss a beat. I mean, as far as blocking wise, if one of your other guards goes down, you plug Josh Sitton in, you don't miss a beat. But if you get rid of Josh Sitton, or if you do get rid of Josh Sitton, it sort of forces you to draft Quentin Nelson, doesn't it? Or even hope that he's there at the eighth spot.
Yeah. That's, again, I go back and forth on these thoughts, and the way I see it is, if they do move on from Josh Sitton, it's that they have some sort of plan for replacement. I don't think they're just going to say, oh yeah, he's old, we're going to get rid of him. Now, what do we do now? I think that they're going to really evaluate it, and if they have a solidified plan, then they may decide to move on from him. Keeping him really, in my opinion, wouldn't do any harm, because like you said, if he doesn't play well, then you could bench him and they'll play somebody else, because no matter what happens with Sitton, I think they're definitely going to be drafting some linemen. So that whole situation there.
Yeah, absolutely. But my whole point is you want to put yourself in the position of not drafting from need and drafting from strength. When you're a good team, and you wonder why good teams stay good, even though they draft later in the first round, it's because they don't draft for need. Is a team like Cleveland, is you look at pretty much any site that does mock drafts and rank, and then they also rank the players, and you look, they, a lot of them will rank that the best 10 players, maybe one quarterback in there, and it's not number one. He's the 10th guy. But then they'll be like, well, the first three teams are drafting quarterbacks. Well, the first three of the first four drafting quarterbacks. And you're like, well, why is that? Is because these teams in the top 10 draft for need, where players in the bottom 10, they draft the best player available. And guys will fall that are really good because other teams are overdrafting for a position of need. And when you put yourself in a bad spot, like cutting a Josh Sitton or not picking up his contract, and you don't have a replacement on your roster, you're just asking for trouble. You're telling the league, hey, we have this absolute gaping hole, and we already have other gaping holes. We have a gaping hole at cornerback. We have a gaping hole at wide receiver. Now you're going to have a gaping hole in the middle of your offensive line. It's just not a smart move. And it really puts you in a predicament. Last year, they let Alshon Jeffrey go, and their answer was Marcus Wheaton and Kendall Wright.
Right. The whole replacement thing, like you said, is definitely the biggest issue.
So that's my whole thing of why they shouldn't let him go. Is it because I think Josh Sitton is great and needs to be a starter on this team? No, I'm fine. I'm totally fine if you find somebody better than Josh Sitton, and Josh Sitton is an $8 million bench guy, a backup guy. I'm totally fine with that. I don't want them to go into a season where they're like, who's playing cornerback, who's playing wide receiver, who are your two guards? That's a bad spot, and that's really setting up a rookie coach to be in a bad predicament.
Right, and that's why I'm leaning towards they are going to keep him, but I have the alternate thought of if they don't keep him, that they have to have some sort of a plan. Like I just said earlier, I don't think they're just going to cut him with no plan. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, you hope that Ryan Pace learned his lesson from some of these other situations.
Well, think about it. I don't think Ryan Pace would be foolish enough to say, yeah, we'll just play by ear on the offensive line with our most important asset, who is a young quarterback. I know he's made those blunders in the past with like the wide receiver and whatnot, but I really do hope that at this point he understands the fundamental importance of the offensive line with what he's trying to develop here.
Yeah, absolutely. One quick thing I wanted to mention was I read a story that the Bears, part of the reason that they didn't choose to go with Josh McDaniels is they had an inkling that he didn't want to leave New England. And if that's the case, then, man, the Bears really two-upped the Indianapolis Colts, because the rumor was the Indianapolis Colts were interested in Matt Nagy too. And so if the Bears went out and got him, maybe even triple-upped him, because they went out and got the guy that Indianapolis was interested in, was smart enough to not go after a guy that didn't want to leave, and the Colts weren't, and they got bamboozled and looked silly. And before they could ink a deal with a new head coach, the Bears already had an entire coaching roster filled out and added Brad Childress, a former head coach, as an offensive consultant onto the boot. That's impressive. That actually is really impressive.
It is, and it makes the whole Colts situation with McDaniels makes me more and more thankful that the Bears took care of business right away. Because my whole thing with McDaniels was, I never thought that he was the right coach choice for the Bears. And frankly, I'm not sure that he's going to be a fantastic coach. I just don't know. And that maybe the Colts will end up being better off with Frank Reich. In fact, I think they will be better off with Frank Reich. But it's just the whole principle of hiring the guys you wanted for him and then him just saying no and having to start the process over again. That just puts a lot of stress and bad hard work for the Colts. So yeah, in the end of the day, they may end up better with Frank Reich, but that just really caused them a lot of issues they had to deal with quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. But the last thing I want to talk about with the Bears per se is I'm hearing rumors that the Bears are going to go hard and heavy to sign Jarvis Landry.
Yeah, I've heard that too.
And I'm on the fence with him. He was really productive with the Dolphins with a terrible quarterback situation, but he didn't want to be there. So you just worry, will he want to be with the Bears, or will he just be content when he gets a lot of money? That's the big question. But my thing on it is, my big issue with the situation is that there was a ton of Bears fans that were just they were all aboard the Jarvis Landry train until Greg Gabriel, who was the former Bears, director of scouting, now resident loudmouth, was on a rant about terrible signing. And then suddenly so many Bears fans just did an about face. I'm like, don't sign Jarvis Landry. It'd be a terrible mistake. Honestly, as fans, until it happens and we see what the result is, none of us know what it's going to be, the situation's going to be like. So have your opinion, but make it your opinion. Don't flip-flop based on what Greg Gabriel says, because this is the guy who's two biggest in almost a decade as a Bears head of scouting. The two best wide receivers they drafted were Mark Bradley and Justin Gage.
Eesh.
And he's also the guy who he had 2 first-round draft picks, and he took Michael Haynes and Rex Grossman.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. Frankly, when it comes to Landry, I wouldn't mind if they signed him. I don't know what kind of contract he's going to get exactly, but I'm not like, oh, let's go Jarvis Landry hype train, but I'm not going to suddenly turn around and say, oh no, don't, he sucks, blah 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 blah. So, like you, I'm kind of on the fence on it.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, he's predominantly a slot guy, but there's not a ton of receivers out there. And you can't rely on drafting a first round wide receiver and having him just excel, because statistically it takes a couple years before a wide receiver really hits a stride. And so if you're trying to really turn things around for your rookie quarterback, your supposed franchise quarterback, is sure, get him as many weapons as possible. Even if that guy's your best wide receiver is going to be a slot guy, who cares? Better to have a really good slot guy than nobody, right?
Yeah.
So, it doesn't stop you from drafting one of, the best wide receiver in the draft, because if you're the number 8 and you're the Bears, you will draft whoever you think is the best wide receiver in the draft. Nobody's drafting a wide receiver before you. So you have your option of the best wide receiver in the draft, and you could go out and sign Jarvis Landry. Nothing's stopping you from doing both.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of open opportunity here.
Yeah, it's absolutely. There's a ton of opportunity for you to get better on offense. And you may have to overpay a wide receiver, but you know what? An overpaid wide receiver is a happy wide receiver.
Yeah, and I think that though the Bears have not been contenders in a while and they still have some work to do to be legitimate contenders, if you're worried about Landry playing here and you compare it to Alshon Jeffrey, think about how much the situation is going to be changing with A, the state of the team, B, the culture here, and C, kind of the personnel that he's going to be working with. So, I wouldn't compare the situation to Jeffrey like I've seen some people do.
Yeah, absolutely. Different, completely different apples and oranges. So yeah, I'm not opposed to it, and I realize what he is. You're not going out and getting, a number 1 outside receiver. You're getting a slot guy, but he's a really good slot guy, and you could you could easily turn this around from the worst wide receiver core in football to the best in football with Cam Meredith being healthy, signing Jarvis Landry to be your slot guy, and going out and drafting somebody that turns out to be very good. And suddenly you're just turned around. And I know it's a lot easier to say draft somebody really good, but yeah, that's your job. But if you draft somebody high, you gotta expect they're going to be good.
Yeah, right on.
But there's one last thing in football I wanted to talk about. For those of you that listen to the show regularly, this time of year, every week, I pick a position, and I scout some of the names that are going to be you're going to hear in the NFL draft. I don't just look at highlight films because that doesn't really tell you anything. I watch every single snap of multiple games to see what it is they do when they have the ball, when they don't have the ball, bad plays, good plays, everything in between to see the tendencies and really try to project how these guys are going to look. And I pick a position every week. Last week I did the tight ends. This week is quarterbacks. Next week will be running backs. So if there's a player that you guys want to see scouted, just let me know. If it's a tight end, I will do it, add it on to next week. If it's a position that's I haven't covered yet, I will make sure to scout that player and discuss it when we do that week. But this week is quarterbacks. And if you notice, I will the position of need for the Bears, I'll sort of save that for later, so you guys keep tuning in. But quarterback isn't the team need this year. So I kind of put that earlier. So I looked at a handful of quarterbacks and really tried to break down who they are and what they'll be in the NFL. The first one I looked at is Lamar Jackson, 6'3", 211 out of Louisville. Pros on him, Heisman Trophy winner. He's an absolutely dynamic player in the open field and a dynamic athlete. He's really creative in the pocket. You'll see him with shovel passes and just his ability to move. Really creative in the pocket to get away from pressure. Absolutely strong arm. You'll watch him just flick of the wrist, throw it 60, 70 yards down the field. And his production in college was just phenomenal. He's a deadly weapon in the red zone because of his speed and athleticism. He's got the ability to drive the ball. And between last season and this season, he packed on some muscle because before he was a really lean guy. Now he's starting to fill out a little more. But some of the cons on him are he's not on medium to deep passes. He's not very accurate. And in fact, he's got an under 60% completion in every single season he's ever played in college. That's a low number. And he will stare down a receiver, just absolutely stare him down. And he misses wide open targets way too much. He'll make some awful decisions under pressure, whether that's running right into, trying to evade one block and running into, or invade one tackler and running square into another one without protecting the ball. Or if it's throwing an ill-advised pass, he will make some really bad decisions. He overthrows deep threats a lot, and he gets a little too loosey-goosey with the ball in the pocket. Ultimately, if the NFL didn't way overdraft quarterbacks, he's a third rounder. But in the reality of the NFL that we experience, if you get this guy with one of the first few picks of the second round, you've got to be thrilled. The thing with him is with his ability, his arm, his athleticism, the moon is the ceiling, but he's going to be a real boomer bust pick. And I think he's actually going to be okay. I think he's a very Cam Newton-y. Next, I looked at Baker Mayfield, who 6'1", 220 out of Oklahoma. Now, this guy is a real fiery competitor. He's got extreme accuracy, uses his eyes to move defenders, He knew that offense inside and out. His accuracy was great in all three phases, short, medium, and long passes. In fact, his accuracy, he completed over 53% of his passes greater than 21 yards. He's got some surprising arm strength, especially when he really steps into it, and he's another Heisman winner. But the cons on him, he's a real prima donna. Even at the Senior Bowl, they made a big thing about how he decided he was going to play in the Senior Bowl. He played a couple of series, and as soon as they took him out of the game, he left the stadium, walked off in his full gear, got dressed, and went home while the game was still going on. That just doesn't sit well with me. He's got some other off the field issues. There was the issue of, taunting the other side, grabbing his crotch. So he's a poor decision maker off the field. He's not the fastest guy. He's very short for NFL quarterback. So you'll see a lot of batted balls. And he comes from a spread offense, which doesn't really project well in the NFL. And he's got some inconsistent footwork. In some ways, he gets a lot of the Johnny Manziel comparisons. In some ways, it's fair. In some ways, it's not. Baker Mayfield is not a head case like Johnny Manziel. He's going to work harder, I think. But they both have a similar talent and skill set. But Baker Mayfield's going to need to work really, really hard to be a good NFL quarterback. Drew Brees had to learn how to be a good short quarterback. And if Baker Mayfield tries or just shows up to try to be a good quarterback by just showing up, he's going to fail miserably. This is another boomer bust pick, and I think he's going to end up being a bust. Next up is Josh Rosen, 6'4", 218 out of UCLA. He's got a very good understanding of the offense, a nice touch on the ball. His mechanics and footwork are pretty flawless, but he is not accurate on the move. He has no threat of running the ball. His accuracy is not that great. When he completes passes, he doesn't put the receiver in position to get yards after the catch. It's a lot of reaching behind him and stopping. And once they get the catch, they go down. Doesn't have the best arm strength. Overall, I really don't understand the Josh Rosen love. Plus, I've read multiple reports about how he's hard to coach and is not totally beloved by his teammates, which is a big red flag when you have an NFL or a potential NFL quarterback. I could see him having some success in a West Coast offense, but he's not a top guy in my book, and I don't understand the love for Josh Rosen. Couple more guys. Next is Sam Darnold, 6'4", 220 out of USC. This guy keeps the offense humming. He scans the field and takes what the defense gives. He doesn't force things, leads the receivers real well. Good NFL size at 6'4", 220, and he's an underrated scrambler. The only cons I have on him are he only had 2 years in college, and his completion percentage dropped from his freshman to sophomore year, which is a little bit of a red flag. He had way too many turnovers, 13 interceptions and 9 fumbles lost last year. And he's too willing to take a sack. He won't throw that ball away. And he's got a little bit of a weird hitch in his delivery. It's hard to describe. It's like he puts the ball down before he throws it. They're going to have to work on it at the pros. But he's easily the best quarterback in this draft. And barring injury, barring injury, I see him as worst case scenario as a solid NFL starter. It's hard to go wrong with Sam Darnold, I think. Very, very Andrew Luckish. The last two guys, I have Josh Allen, 6'5", 233 out of Wyoming. He's another Carson Wentz kind of guy, where he just kind of shot up on people's boards. He scans the field well, nice touch on passes, deceptive ability to scramble, prototypical NFL size. He will do magic things with a double pump and create problems with the defensive backs. Really strong arm. And he's kind of Ben Roethlisberger-y, where he's not super agile and athletic, but he's so strong in his base that it's hard to bring him down. But the cons on him is at Wyoming, he didn't play top end talent. His completion percentage is not so great. His footwork is think Jay Cutlery, where his arm strength so good, his footwork goes to crap and he'll just rely on his arm. And he's too willing to take a hit rather than sliding. So he'll run and he will just put his shoulder down and try to take you out. And he'll trust his arm way too much. Very Brett Favre-ish. I see a lot of Ben Roethlisberger and Josh Allen, but on the flip side, I also see a lot of Jake Locker. This is a kid that's going to need a bridge quarterback because he's going to need that time and coaching to be a productive NFL player. If you plug him in right away, I think you're going to get a failure. But if you give him the time to succeed, I think he could be something. And last but not least is Luke Falk, 6'4", 223 out of Washington State. This is a kid that is a 4-year starter with a career over 68% completion rate. That's nice. Nice accuracy on the short to medium passes. And really nice quick release. But every single year he played, his interceptions went up, and that's not supposed to happen. You're supposed to see him go down as you get more into the, more mature and more into the system. He doesn't have a lot of great strength or accuracy in deep. Excuse me. He doesn't have a lot of great strength or accuracy in his deep passes, and his pocket awareness is pretty bad. Luke Falk is pretty much a mid-round guy. He's not going to lead your team to a Super Bowl, but he's going to be a solid backup that can steer the ship for a few games if needed. So those are the quarterbacks. If there's anybody that wants to know more about another quarterback, let me know. Or if there's any other position position player you want to hear about, let me know. And I love watching college game film. It's just that at some point I only have so much time in a day and I got to draw a line. So I pick some few interesting names and go from there. All right, Alex, are you ready to talk baseball?
Oh, I have been ready all night.
So we've been teasing you a little bit with this, but we'll tease you a little more. There's a certain former Cubs great player that a picture surfaced of him, and to my wife, the shockingness of the picture was related to one thing, but having seen this player, over the years, I'm not as shocked by the thing she was shocked by. But the player is Sammy Sosa, and my wife was very shocked because he is now a white man. I was shocked because of his sweet cowboy outfit. I'm not sure if you saw this picture.
Yeah, I saw it. When I first saw it, I had to double take. I'm like, wait, is that Sammy Sosa? It is. And even had a gun in the holster as well.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on. And I think the best comment I read about the picture was, where's Ken Burns? Because we need a 13-hour documentary about the last 10 years of Sammy Sosa.
Yeah, honestly, I'm kind of intrigued on what he's been up to ever since he left baseball, because you really don't hear much.
No, you don't hear much, but remember when he went to speak in front of Congress and he suddenly forgot how to speak English?
Yeah, I do.
Then he forgot how to be a black guy. And then he just suddenly is like one of the village people. I'm like, I don't know. This is a guy that just does what he does.
Yeah, I guess he wanted a new style. He wanted a new look, and he chose the cowboy route. I just wasn't really expecting to see that photo. Wasn't expecting him to take that kind of route, but I guess that's what he's into now.
Yeah, Sammy, you do you.
Yep.
But the other former Chicago great player that is WTF moment is Esteban Loaiza.
Yeah. Wow.
Esteban Loaiza, at one point in his White Sox career, was the runner-up for the AL Cy Young Award. The runner-up for the AL Cy Young Award in 2003, not that long ago. And he just got caught with 44 pounds of heroin and cocaine. 44 pounds.
Yeah, isn't he living in San Diego now? Did I read that right?
I don't know where he's living, but that he was caught in San Diego, so
Okay.
probably lives there. But 44 pounds.
Yeah.
That is a lot of drugs.
Yeah, it's not like just a little bag here or there. That's a pretty significant amount.
Yeah, so he's going to be in jail for a long time. And the guy was just at White Sox Fest. Like, he was just at Sox
That's
Fest.
right.
He was one of the guests. So going from being celebrated at Sox Fest to getting caught with 44 pounds of heroin and cocaine.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I didn't expect that news either. Let's just say that. But this one was really shocking. I don't know what he's been up to exactly, but
We can take a guess, though.
yeah, I mean, clearly he's gotten all this somehow. I don't know if he's doing a lot of it and he's selling a lot of it or a little of both, but 40 pounds is quite an amount of drugs, and he's probably going to be doing some hard time.
Yeah, good old Pablo Escobar Loaiza.
Man, I couldn't believe by that amount.
But the actual big news, and pretty much the only big news in baseball, the Cubs finally broke down and they signed Yu Darvish.
Yep, the news broke Saturday afternoon, and it was one of those things where I wasn't really expecting it to happen because of all the rumblings of, oh, there's no deal even close. So I wasn't ruling out him signing with the Cubs. I just didn't think it was going to happen at that time. I didn't think it was going to happen anytime soon. And then all of a sudden, there he was, deal with the Cubs, reported by Ken Rosenthal and Bob Nightingale and John Heyman. So there you go.
Well, the crazy part is that like 2 days before, maybe 3 days, Barstool Sports tweeted out that they heard it was basically an almost done deal between the Cubs and Yu Darvish. And I got really excited when I saw it. But then Yu Darvish replied to it and put hashtag fake news.
Yeah, I remember that. And a lot of people were adding at whoever that reporter was, and that was quite a sight to see.
Yeah, because it ended up being right.
But that was so long before. That's the funny thing.
Yeah, I mean, you keep hearing rumblings that it was this was going to happen. So it was nice to see it finally happen. But I'm also hearing that the Cubs made a last-ditch call to Jake Arrieta.
Yeah, and they were talking about that on the radio earlier today, and there were some like rumblings on Twitter and social media that was really kind of a courtesy type thing where they reached out to him, and he did so much for the organization, so they didn't want to move on without at least talking to him. And also could have been leaked out because Boris wanted to do a little marketing, if you will, for his client. So I think that was really kind of done more out of respect than actually serious. I think this is just my opinion, but I think they were pretty much in on Darvish the whole time.
Yeah, I think so. I really think so. And there's a few fans out there that are really nervous about this. And here's a few things about it. Is one, it's it's the recency bias. So you're only looking at Yu Darvish from his most recent experience, which was the World Series, and he didn't play well in the World Series. Nobody's going to argue that. But if you think a few days before the World Series, when he was facing the Cubs, he had some good stuff going, and in the World Series, it's pretty much been shown that he was tipping pitches, and when you tip a pitch, especially in the World Series, guys are going to hit it. And they're going to hit it hard, and they're going to hit it far.
And you can tell when pitches are being tipped because not only are they hitting it hard and far, you see a lot of aggressive swinging. I mean, that's just one little tip of a tipped pitch. And as many scouts and coaches will tell you, it's a pretty easy fix. And especially for a guy as elite as Yu Darvish, I think that this is something that the Cubs could get under control. And also, in addition to the tipping pitches, keep in mind that a lot of pitchers in that World Series got rocked on both sides. It was a very offensive World Series.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I mean, part of the reason that the Dodgers were so darn good, because they had Yu Darvish.
Yeah. I mean, look at everything he did before then. Darvish is a really good pitcher, and small sample sizes can't take away from how good he's been in other years. I get it. It's going to scream out you a little more when it's the World Series. It's exposed more. Everyone who is even a casual baseball fan will know about it. So I understand that. I understand the concerns about the age, but there's so many other upsides to this that I think have to be looked at.
And if you look at his projections for this upcoming season, you're looking at a pitcher projection-wise, 1.17 whip, 3.6 ERA, 202 strikeouts, and a 4 WAR. You take that.
That's pretty darn good.
You take that. Especially considering, look, this is what your rotation is going to be, barring some sort of injury. John Lester, Jose Quintana, Kyle Hendricks, Yu Darvish, and Chatwood.
Yeah, that's something that someone would dream of to have as a rotation, because there's been a lot of talk about comparing the rotation, this one, and to the other better rotations in baseball. And you got to say this is at least a top 5 rotation.
Oh, yeah, this is easily a top 5 rotation. This is a really darn good rotation. And you think about when the playoffs roll around, is you go in a 4-man rotation. Where's the weak link there? In other years, even the World Series year, you had in your 4-man rotation, you had long memory John Lackey. Where is the weak link here?
Yeah, I mean, really the biggest question, I think, for me is how well is Tyler Chatwood going to do? And I'm pretty high on Chatwood being a solid 5 guy. Is he going to be anywhere near an ace? No, but if he's going to be a really good 5, then you're going to take that. The big point that I've made many, many times on other shows and in writing articles and whatnot is that you have a rotation where Jose Quintana might be your number 4. Jose Quintana.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, it's really incredible. Is you've got 4 really, really good pitchers, and Tyler Chatwood, who's an unknown, but a promising unknown.
Right. And he's still young. They've called his movement elite. He just has to locate it, and he's going to be pitching away from Coors Field. He's pitched much better on the road as a Rocky, and he's going to have a guy like Jim Hickey working with him. That's a really good thing.
and he's going to be able to work with better bats in his lineup, and he's going to be able to work as the number 5.
And he's going to be able to work with a really good infield. And he's a ground ball pitcher primarily.
And another underrated thing about this Yu Darvish move is the numbers don't break the bank. Sure, it's 6 years, but the average yearly value is a lot less than most of us were expecting for Yu Darvish.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about what they were projecting him to get when the offseason started, or even right before the offseason started. A lot of people thought that he was going to be racking up a total of $200 million. I'm not just talking average per year. I'm talking total. They were looking at like $200 million contracts.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that, sure, this is a lot of money, but it still leaves the Cubs well under the luxury tax.
Yeah, it does. I think that a lot of people will look at the contract and be more concerned about the years, and I get it. Wrong side of 30, 6 years. There are opt-out clauses, so, who knows how many years he's actually going to be here. It's going to depend on how he does and how the Cubs themselves do. But the way I see it is, your window of contention is right now. Go all out right now. And if that means giving him 6 years, you know what? If they're fine with it, I'm fine with it.
Yeah, I trust Jed and Theo.
Yeah, me too.
And this still leaves you the opportunity to. This doesn't put you out of going after Bryce Harper or Manny Machado next year.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I still think they're going to go after Bryce Harper very hard next year. And I think that they've been pretty smart with their money overall. Yeah, Hayward's bat isn't exactly what they desired, but overall, they're paying for what they've wanted. And hopefully this works out with Yu Darvish, and I think it will, at least for the first few years. And those first few years are when the Cubs are in their prime contending years.
Yep. So yeah, this is what you're looking for is, think about it as far as the Blackhawks went, is you've got to get as many championships as you can during your window, because when that window closes, it gets hard to win, because the more you win, the more expensive your players are. And, you want to, you need to pay these players to stay good. And then once they get to a certain point, you're overpaying for underperforming. And that's when you start getting bad.
Right.
So those back ends of the contracts. So the last couple of years of John Lester, probably not going to be that pretty. The last few years of the Yu Darvish contract, probably not going to be that pretty, especially when you come up with got to pay Chris Bryant, and he's going to want $400 bajillion, and Anthony Rizzo is going to want a new contract, and you're going to have to figure out what you want to do with Addison Russell and Javi Baez.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of figuring out to do. Obviously, they're going to have to worry about that when the time comes. But right now, I can't worry about that. What I want right now is focusing on winning another World Series within the next few years.
Yeah, and I don't know if you saw, there was a interview with a bunch of the Cubs players, and they asked who the Cubs will be playing in the World Series this year. And somebody said, I think the Yankees. Somebody was like, oh, the Astros. And Javi Baez is like, doesn't matter. And I'm like, I love that answer. It doesn't matter. Is you go out, you take care of business, take on whoever's in front of you, and you run through them like a freight train. I love the way you responded. doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's the right attitude to have, I think.
I mean, he's frustrating at times, but damn it, do I love some Javi Baez.
Oh, I do too. Just the excitement he brings and some of the great fundamentals he plays. I mean, watching him play defense is incredible. It's such a treat. And I think that his enthusiasm, his high energy is something that the team just loves. And that it really is a boost for them.
If you just wish he would get a little more consistency at the plate.
Oh, no doubt.
But yeah, this is gonna be a very, very good team that we watch this year. And the only big question left is where does Jake Arrieta go?
Yeah, there are a few teams I have in mind. One big one I have is the Phillies, because they're trying to do that weird thing of contending while rebuilding. So they'll have the money. So I could see that. I could also see the Nationals going hard. So I don't know what you think of those two.
It was funny. One of my work friends was asking me where I thought he would go, and I was like, Phillies was one, the Twins are the other, and maybe the Yankees. But I was thinking Brewers, but is the first $100 million plus contract that the Brewers ever hand out in the history of the organization going to be for Jake Arrieta?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about them getting Jake Arrieta. I think the Brewers are going to be a Lance Lynn, Alex Cobb type team. I think they'll go after one of those two. I really don't see it. It could happen, but I don't see it. I think if there was a team in the Central he'd go to, it'd be the Cardinals over the Brewers.
Yep. I think so. I think that would be the team. But, he might even end up back in Texas with the Rangers.
Maybe.
That's a possibility.
I've actually, funny story, actually. I've heard connections with John Lackey and the Rangers. Nothing serious, but I saw someone speculate that could be a place for him.
Good. Let him go.
I think that'd be perfect.
But I really think that Philadelphia and Minnesota are my two odds-on favorite.
Yeah, I'm going to go Philadelphia, Washington as my favorites, with the Twins as my number 3. I would like to see him go to the Twins because I'd like to see him out of the NL so we wouldn't have to face him in any big games. And I mean, that's my main reason there. And I think since he'd be playing in Minnesota, he would be playing against the White Sox, and I'd be able to watch him pitch when they play the White Sox. So it'd be kind of a nice thing where I could watch him pitch from time to time, and I wouldn't have to worry about facing him.
Yeah, that was one of my reasons. Is not only do I think those two teams are likely, but it's I prefer it because he'll get the money he wants. He won't be in the division. I'll get to see him every so often because if he plays for the Phillies, then you can see him play the Cubs every once in a while. And if it's the Twins, you'll see him play the Sox, and he won't win any World Series. That's petty of me. I don't want to see him get a World Series before the Cubs get another one.
And let me just make something very clear. When I say that he would play against the White Sox, it's not me saying, "Oh, he's playing against the White Sox. Oh, he's going to beat up the White Sox." No, that has nothing to do with it. My whole point of him being in the same division as the White Sox is that he would play them fairly often, and I'd be able to watch him pitch on TV. That's literally all I mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, I got that because the White Sox, you get to see them. They're on TV every game, so they're in division, see it all the time. And no skin in the
And
race.
heck, if I could get some Sox tickets when he's in town pitching, maybe I'll do that just to watch him pitch again.
Much more affordable than Cubs tickets.
Yeah, exactly.
And easier to come by. So yeah, if he goes to an AL team, it'll be, it works for me personally better. I just don't want to see him go to the Cardinals or the Brewers. Any team but those two.
It would be nice to. Yeah, exactly. If he goes to the Nationals, fine. If he goes to the Phillies, fine. If he goes to the Twins, better than any NL team, but just not the Cardinals or the Brewers. I'm totally with you on that.
My only thing is I just don't see how the Nationals make it happen because they are so petrified of going over that luxury tax. And they were so frugal last year with things. I just don't know how they make a Jake Arrieta deal come when the Cubs couldn't get him on a low offer. I just don't see how the Nationals do it.
Yeah, like the logistics aren't there. The fit is there though, but not the logistics.
Oh, the fit is totally there. I guarantee that they are in constant conversation with Boris. It's just I don't know if they have the financial weapons to do it.
Yeah, exactly. I would really like to see where he ends up because I'm sick of kind of just waiting on him. Even though I know he's not going to come to the Cubs, I just really want to see him go somewhere because I'll always love Jake Arrieta, and I hope he succeeds wherever he goes, and I hope that he can find a good fit. At the same time, I don't want him to be in a position where he could beat the Cubs in a big game. So there's a little bit of anticipation there still.
Yeah, the big question is, does he sign before spring training starts?
Well, pitchers and catchers report tomorrow. So I'm not sure about that, but I think he may be signed before the actual games begin. But we'll see.
It's going to be interesting. I'm so glad now that we don't have to sit there and worry about it. Is where all the big names that are still out there, Cubs aren't signing. They show up tomorrow with pitchers and catchers, and Joe's already out there meeting with his coaches. Everything's bright and sunny and golden for the Cubs right now.
Exactly. They got what they want. They have everything set. They have everything like planned out. They know what they're going to be like. They know what the team's going to look like. They know the dynamic. They know where they improved. So it feels good. It feels good to be a bit more relaxed than still kind of waiting on them looking for another starting pitcher.
Exactly. I don't know if there's any other topics that you want to talk about.
There is one thing I wanted to discuss with you. What do you think the rotation is going to look like, considering who's going to play where and where you think they're going to play?
The rotation or the whole starting team?
Just the rotation.
Man.
If you had to give me an order.
I'm going to say starters. Lester will get opening day. Hendricks will get home opener.
Okay. Interesting.
And
makes sense.
And I'm going to say they're going to go, man. I think they're going to do lefty, righty. So that's going to be, it's whether or not Hendricks or Lester is going to be the number one guy. I'm going to go with Lester just because I had him as opening day starter. So I'm going to say Lester. Oh, man. I'm going to say Lester, Darvish, Quintana, Hendricks, Chatwood.
Mine is pretty much the same, but I'm going to flip Hendricks and Quintana. Right now, I have him as our 4, even though he's perfectly capable of being a 2. Like I said, this whole depth makes this thing's so much better. But the way that Kyle Hendricks has pitched and what he's proven to do, I think at least will merit him in a top 3 spot. And I think Darvish is going to be a solidified number 2, because even though Lester is older, I still think this is his rotation to lead.
Yeah, I agree. And I just, there's no wrong way to do it. I like lefty righty. And so I'm like, I'm starting with Lester. So that means Hendricks or Darvish has to be second. Yeah. So, but this is it's going to be fun to watch.
Yes, it is. Unlike the Blackhawks, who just pulled Anton Forsberg.
Against the worst team in hockey.
Yeah, it's not very good right now.
No. But that's going to do it for this episode of Bill Swerski Sports Talk Chicago. A reminder that this Thursday, February 15th at 7 p.m., we will be doing a live show from Peace Pizza at 1927 West North Avenue. 7 o'clock. Make sure you come, listen to the show, eat some pizza, hang out with us. It'll be awesome. Hit subscribe however you listen to podcasts, whether it's iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, TuneIn. Share with your friends. And thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, bear down.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win! Cubs win! Cubs win!
Oh, I don't want her. You can have her. She's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like Denver New Yorkers. Smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
The Bears.
Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.